Hey everyone, welcome to our session. It's called Before the Platform, Mastering the Unseen Work of Prep and Practice. My name is Ashlee Eiland, and it is my joy to be your coach for this session. Quick question before we dive in. What are the 3 items that you hardly ever leave home without? For me, it's my phone, my keys, and my wallet. If I'm going anywhere, chances are I have those 3 items with me, and it makes my journey a whole lot more smooth. Same goes with speaking. We all have practices that we pour into our craft before we step onto a stage or sit down in front of a camera. But I have found that there are 3 practices in particular that have served as really helpful diagnostic tools that elevate my speaking and my teaching before I step onto a stage or say a first word. So I'm so excited to share those with you. The first check that I'm going to introduce you to is called check your content. So there are 3 T's, just like any good outline. We've got some alliteration going on, but 3 T's that have helped me with my content checks, whether you're manuscripting and writing stuff out word for word or working off of an outline. I think any of these 3 tips can really help no matter how you are presenting your content. But the first check is to check for tension. I always like to ask myself, have I given my audience a point of tension to work around? Have I given them a question to wrestle with? I find that especially if we're preaching in the church space or presenting content to a group of people where they're trying to solve a problem or figure out a way to solve something going on in their lives, tension is so key. So I do this by going through and checking for key questions that I've sprinkled throughout my content. Have I given my audience an opportunity to answer questions rhetorically or perhaps out loud if you like more interaction with your folks? But there's also a visual that I have found super helpful when checking for tension in my content, and it's a roller coaster. If you love roller coasters, you know that uptick, you're building so much tension, you're really trying to anticipate when that huge drop is coming, but you don't want to be held there forever or else you're going to think the roller coaster is broken. So just like on a real roller coaster, we want to check in our content and make sure that we don't keep our audience in one place for too long. So usually I'll start my content with a story, perhaps relating it back to motherhood or involving my kids. But I also want to take my audience to a deeper level where they are resonating with the content in their own lives. So if I stay funny or relatable for too long, I want to make sure that I'm taking my audience to a different depth where they're able to wrestle with the content for themselves or to ask questions that they can then point back to in their own lives. But then I don't want to keep them there too long either. So if you tell a story that has a more sad ending, how do we lift our audience up and give them opportunities to smile or to laugh? So I will physically go through my manuscript or my outline and almost chart it as I would a roller coaster to see, are there any areas in my content where I could insert a story or a moment of pause or a visual or a question to give my audience a different experience with the tension that I'm trying to build? And then, do I help them resolve it? And resolving tension doesn't always mean that we're answering questions for our audience, but are we giving them handles to either take home with them or something to wrap their minds and hearts around as they leave time with us in that space? So the first content check is tension. The second is to make sure that we are checking the boxes of what I call the triad. So imagine these 3 circles, and most of us are fitting into one of 3 learning styles. We're either thinkers, doers, or feelers when it comes to learning. Myself, I'm a feeler thinker, and so I love stories of emotion sprinkled throughout content. I love thinking about a topic, so good research really helps me process well and relate any talk or content back to my own life. Are we making sure that what we are presenting and what we are saying is giving everyone something to take home with them? Are we giving enough research and data for the thinkers? Have we inputted enough story or our own vulnerability for the feelers? And are we giving good action steps and challenges for the doers? So that's just another check to go through your manuscript or your outline and make sure that no matter who is engaging with your presentation in that time, that they feel like they're really going home with something because of their own personal learning style. And then finally, the third T is truth. So I preach and teach in churches a lot. And so I'm making sure, is what I'm saying in alignment with the truth of God? And is it true for me? So what this means, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm asking everyone to prescribe to my own exegesis or how I'm processing the content for my own life. But what I'm asking is, have I sat with this for long enough for me to authentically present it to someone else? So instead of reading the research or reading the scripture, have I allowed the research or the scripture to read me? Have I allowed it to filter through my own life so that it is presented in a more authentic way? So a couple of ways that I check for truth in whatever I'm presenting. I have my own personal board of directors, if you will, or people that I trust who are smarter than I am, who have more experience, to filter through my manuscript or my outline to make sure that there's nothing that I'm saying that is contradictory or that would serve as a roadblock for people who are listening to me. And then I also just journal through my own manuscripts. I say, you know what, before I open a commentary, before I go to research, how is this making me feel? What triggers is this hitting? And how might this be relatable to other people as well? So those are our 3 T's for our first content check: tension, triad, and truth, okay? So for our second check, remember, phone, keys, wallet, we've just talked about content. We're going to check our terrain. So this is where I like to evaluate the environment in which I'm speaking to make sure that I am comfortable before I even step into that space or into that environment. So the first question of 3 that I ask in this bullet point is to say, who am I serving? So oftentimes with a conference organizer or with a pastor, I'll ask, who's your audience? What have they been through recently? What are they celebrating? What are they grieving? And how can I help come alongside whatever you're trying to accomplish to add value to your people and to serve and to love them well? That is such an interesting conversation starter, and it helps me tie what I'm saying not just to a void or a mass of people, but to a specific need that is found woven throughout the audience. I also love to ask this question not just for the audience, but for people who are serving the event or the service. So for our tech friends and our tech artists and pastors who are behind the scenes serving us as we speak on a platform or on stage, I've actually created 3 separate ways to present my content in order to serve tech teams. So I have a presentation manuscript, one that I work off of, but I also have what I call a production manuscript. So this is the version that's marked up. It has highlights. It tells anyone who's reading that manuscript, here's where I want you to pull up this specific slide, or here's how long I'd like for you to hold that part of the story or that visual. And this way it's so clear and it serves people so well, trust me, when we've done the extra preparation beforehand to outline for people where exactly we'd like the impact to happen, visually or in an audio capacity. I've heard feedback from folks on the tech end who have said this is so helpful to come prepared with a manuscript or an outline that's just for them. So what would it look like for you to package or present a different version of your outline specifically to serve not just your audience, but the behind the scenes volunteers or staff who are serving you as well as you're speaking? So in addition to who am I serving, I ask, when am I speaking? Now, this is a question I didn't ask for such a long time because I didn't think it mattered, but it is so important for us to know, okay, who is coming before us, before we speak? Who's coming after us? Is there another person? Is there a song? Is there a video playing before us? In this way, we are not surprised when we get up to give our first words or our introduction. We know that we're coming out of another speaker who's ended a certain way, and if they're ending in a certain way that has the audience feeling hyped up and pumped up, we know to come in with a lot of energy. Or if there's a more reflective ending to that video or to that song, how do we come in with tenderness and a sensitivity to where the audience might be in way of wanting to receive what we have to say next? So that's super helpful. But I also like to say, how am I being introduced? And I like to ask the question of, what does my introduction look like? Oftentimes, I'll just offer how I'd like to be introduced so no one has to guess how much of my bio to read or what credentials to mention. It's super helpful to tell folks how you'd like to be introduced so there's no guessing and so that you're not surprised. Okay, third question. We've just talked about, who am I serving? When am I speaking? And then, what do I need? So for me, I know that I like to be really expressive with my hand motions. And I have learned that even though the lavaliers and the ear mics are really cool and they free up your hands, especially if you're using props, I love walking around with a handheld microphone because over the years I've learned that it helps prevent me from doing weird things with my hands, like putting them in my pockets for too long or messing with my hair or my face. I know that if I have a grip on a microphone, that helps me present with more confidence. And so, do you know what you need in order to elevate your personal presentation of your content? So if someone doesn't have a handheld microphone, I'll practice as if I have both hands, and I'll figure out what to do with my hands later. But that's just one example. I know I always need water. I learned that the hard way when halfway through a message, I got cotton-mouthed and I felt like I couldn't get my words out. It felt like my mouth was heavy. I know that I need a stand that doesn't move up and down because I had the temptation of moving a stand up and down and rocking back and forth when I speak. So I need a hard podium when I speak. Do the work of asking for exactly what you need, and then bonus points if you go beyond that to say, okay, if that's not available, how might I present this content and how will the presentation be impacted? So for example, there was one time I showed up and all of my slides were not available. The tech and the AV situation was broken and they didn't have enough time to fix it. And so I had to re-envision what that talk was going to sound like without all of my visuals. So how do you paint more vivid words or pictures with your words? How do you prepare when a prop breaks or it's not available to you? So just do the extra work of trying to figure out, if exactly what I need isn't available, what's my backup plan? Because as my grandma always says, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So do the extra work of staying ready and anticipating what might go wrong around the resourcing of your talk or your presentation. In our current moment where a lot is online, this also includes technical difficulties. So how do you work through a kid coming into frame? How do you welcome those kinds of interruptions? What do you do when your phone is about to die and you don't have time to finish that video? How do you anticipate those interruptions in a way that makes you human, but also serves your audience really well? Okay, so we've checked our content, we've checked our terrain, and finally, we check our own souls. So the question that I always ask myself here is, how do I make myself the most available vessel to deliver the message that I've been sent to give? This is really about availability. It's not about perfection. This is not about hitting a home run each and every time. This is about getting out of the way and removing every potential barrier to you delivering that impactful message that you've been sent to deliver. Whether that's equipping someone with more information that they need to be more effective in their jobs, or preaching from a platform. How do we become the most available vessel? For me, this has to do with soul care. So I know that before I get to a platform, my body, my mind, my heart, and my soul need to be absolutely ready. So I'm exercising. I'm drinking so much water. 2 days before I get to any speak or presentation, I'm making sure that I get as much sleep as possible. On the positive end, I'm making sure I'm relationally full, that I have connection with my husband and my kids and my friends, that I've made those touch points where I feel full to overflowing and ready to give away whatever message that I've been sent to give. But on the other end, what are we doing after we step off that platform? I don't know if you've ever experienced the vulnerability hangover, but it's real to me. And if you're a person who professes Christ and believes in the power of the Holy Spirit, there are some times when I step off of a stage, and that is the point at which I feel the most opposition, the most mental attack. I feel the least worthy after I've given a presentation, feeling like I'm not good enough or the content wasn't perfect enough. So this really speaks to not just our mind, body, and our soul, but the way that we approach our writing of our message and also our practice and our delivery. And there's so many different specifics that I could dial into here about ways to practice that are effective. I do this in some of the one-on-one coaching that I've done with people in the past about practices that are most effective in the way that they deliver their content. But really the overarching message that I'd like to share with you today is that we practice for passion and presence, not perfection. So especially now in a day where a lot of content is preloaded and pre-recorded, I'm giving myself 3 starts before I just go with it. Because I know that in my intro, if I don't like the way I look or the way I've sounded coming right out of the gate, I will start over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but there comes a point at which there's so many practice runs where we are not then available to our audience or the people to whom we're presenting to be present with them and looking people in the eye and making human connection. We are more married to how well we delivered that one quote or got that one point exactly right. We are more married to our content than we are available to the people to whom we're delivering. And we are meant to be the most available and helpful vessels to those to whom we've been sent. So I've given myself a limit to help keep perfection at bay and perfectionism at bay, to really be human before the people that I am presenting to be vulnerable as myself. In this way, I feel like I'm more present and more filled with joy versus being overly critical about how I'm presenting to others. So those are just 3 very quick ways that we can run a diagnostic in and through our content before we even step on stage, by going back through our content one more time, by understanding the environment to which we're showing up and really evaluating our terrain, making sure we're making good connections and asking good questions and asking for what we're needing in that space. But we're also checking our own souls, making sure we are filled before we pour out. I challenge you to just right after this session, grab a piece of paper and write down 3 to 5 ways that you could prepare your heart, mind, and soul before you get to a presentation. Whether that's involving your body and getting it moving, or something enjoyable or a hobby that you like to do, or a relational touch point. And then do that for afterwards. What are you doing afterwards? Are you asking people to hold off for 2 days before they give you any critical feedback? That's what I've done in the past with some of my colleagues. I've said, give me any feedback you want. I can hear it as long as it's 48 hours after I've given a presentation or a sermon. But I'm also saying, hey, I need to be filled up again. So what am I doing that's fun? What am I doing that's restful on the other side of a Sunday, as is often my context? So I would challenge you, come up with that personal plan for yourself and see how that might elevate your effectiveness as a leader and as a speaker. It's been a joy being able to guide you through these 3 diagnostic practices today. You can find me at ashleeeiland.com or on Instagram and Twitter at Ashlee_Eiland. Be well and speak well and lead well. Be cheering you on. Grace and peace.